but I think there's something to that Soviet training program. And, you know, when you look at other communist countries, like particularly Cuba, there's no doubt about it. They did whatever they could to make their athletes the best they could. And it just stands to realize.
To a certain extent, I mean, I think if you want to have that peak performance, you want to have that peak human being for whatever you're trying to, you know, put them in. I mean, you can't. Naturally, it's hard. Like, it's very hard. It's the hardest road. Well, you could get lucky. You could get lucky and get a Francis Ngannou with like the best genetics ever, or you can just start manipulating someone when they're very young. Yeah. If you get a young kid and you start giving them growth hormone and IGF-1 and all peptides and stuff when they're really little, like you can get. It depends on their diet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like most of everything we eat is processed and trash.
That too. I'm sure they're giving them
food.
optimal nutrition. I'm sure with that kind of a program, like a communist program where everything is on the line. Like if you are a athlete for a totalitarian dictatorship, like whether it's Cuba or Russia or China, whatever it is, they will do whatever they can to make their athletes the best. Like the idea of cheating, we saw it in the Sochi Olympics with that documentary Icarus. Have you seen that documentary? Mm-hmm. It's a great documentary by Brian Fogel about. I've talked about this recently. I apologize to people who listened, but the Brian Fogel, what he was going to do is he did a bike race. And he did a bike race natural, and he's a very good athlete, endurance athlete. So he did this bike race natural, and then he went to this guy who is the head of the Soviet anti-doping program, and he said, this is what I want to do. I want to do it natural 1 year, and then the next year I want you to just juice me up to the tits. And we're going to do a documentary and see how I do juiced versus natural. In the process of filming all this, it got released that the Sochi Olympics were rigged. And so what Russia was doing was they put a hole in the wall where the urine samples were, and they were swapping urine samples. So they're taking the dirty urine samples from their, because it was in Russia. So they're taking the dirty urine samples from their athletes and swapping it out for clean urine samples. But they got caught because they found these micro scratches on these jars that were supposedly impossible to open. And that these like impenetrable jars that they stored the urine in to make it secure. But then they did an analysis in the jar, and they said like somebody's been fucking with these jars. And so then they analyzed the urine, and then the whole house of cards came tumbling down while this guy was doing this documentary. And this guy, what was his name? Gregory Rodchenkov? Was that his name?
I think Rodchenkov.
Rodchenkov? That gentleman, who was the head of the Soviet doping program, got in the witness protection program and then spilled the beans on the Soviet Union. He's hiding in America now. I mean, they arrested his family. They took away his family's money. Like they fucked his whole family up. Like the story is crazy. But he detailed everything that they do as far as their doping program, and they doped everybody. They doped everybody except figure skaters.
Damn,
that's the dude. Gregory
Definitely
Rodchenkov.
Not what I was imaging or picturing in my head.
He's hilarious. He's actually funny, but it's an amazing documentary. I can't recommend Icarus enough, but it just shows how far these countries are willing to go in order to gain, national superiority by having their athletes gold medal more than anybody.
Power, it's the most addicting thing, right?
Yeah, and it's also it's national pride. There's a lot involved, and they're all assuming that everybody else is doing this too, because
everybody on some shit.
Yeah, like
everybody's on some shit
for sure. If they can get away with it, they cheat. Pete, there's so much, especially when it comes to things like the Olympics.
Because they'll never stop exploring, trying to find the easier route.
Exactly.